It's always fun in a fight when we have a big-time clash of styles, and in this fight, we don't. We have two really, really good grapplers and good wrestlers as well, with Brazil's Lara Procopio, and she's taking on King Casey O'Neill. For Casey O'Neill, undefeated, eternal MMA prospect. She came in with a win on UAE Warriors, and we've seen a lot of fighters here recently. Carlson Harris being one, Manuel Fiorot at 125 pounds, and Casey O'Neill was able to get a win with UAE Warriors, get the bug in Mick Maynard's ear, and end up in the UFC. And listen, originally she was supposed to take on, in a super short notice spot that ended up going to Lilia Shakarova, she was supposed to fight Lauren Murphy, eventual title challenger, and I say that like I can see the future, but I can't, and also we're not clairvoyant, so we got to get that one out of the way pretty early. But she was supposed to take on Murphy. It didn't happen. And then she ended up with a really interesting fight against Shayna Dobson. Was coming off from Maria Agapova win. So it was a big name opponent in a roundabout way. Listen, Casey O'Neill looked great in that fight. And she's a fighter that used to train out of Tiger Muay Thai, a main training partner of Loma Lookboonmee. You'd see the two fighters on each other's Instagrams. Made the move over to the States, out of Vegas. Listen, big time camps, and we can really get into it. I mean, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. Casey Halstead doesn't get enough credit. I think he should. And you saw in Casey O'Neill a great fight and a great game planner last time out.
No, she did look really good, and that's going to be the key going into this fight is, can she improve upon what she looked like in the Shayna Dobson fight? Because for me, listen, Shayna Dobson's an interesting fighter, and we've always had differing opinions on her because, listen, she was what? Did she hold the title still as the biggest underdog to ever win a UFC fight? A wild stat to have for Shayna Dobson. But we always knew that the grappling was her weakness. And the fact that Casey O'Neill beat her the way that she did, it was impressive, don't get me wrong. But that's the way you're going to beat Shayna Dobson. You're going to take her down, you're going to ground and pound her. And the question coming into this fight is, can Casey O'Neill have that same level of success against Lara Procopio? Because for Lara, she can do a lot of those same things that Casey O'Neill can. I just look at Lara as the slightly more refined striker out of these two. Because for Casey O'Neill, you talk about the Loma Lookboonmee connection and the fact that she did train at Tiger Muay Thai. Her striking is still quite basic. You always hear about the Tiger Muay Thai connection, but I never look at Casey O'Neill and think, wow, she's a fighter who can really go out there, march behind her Thai stance, and throw a lot of leg
And
kicks.
for Casey O'Neill, her father, I had this written down from the last time, Cam O'Neill, he's the promoter, the owner of Eternal MMA, and she talked about it in a comment under one of our videos. Somebody was just giving her the business and getting really upset about it. She responded to the hater, and listen, credit where it's due. She put her money where her mouth was and won that fight handily against Shayna Dobson, so you get the credit. But again, her dad was a pro kickboxer, and she's a bit of a different breed. She has the grappling, the wrestling, and everything, so to speak. For Lara Procopio, I didn't really know what I was going to get coming into the UFC. I had a bit of an idea, and you look at it on the regional scene. She was a Shuto champ at 125 pounds and 135 pounds. Came into the UFC and fought Carol Hossa. Carol Hossa's a really good fighter. That was a split decision loss that honestly could have gone either way. Procopio was actually the one shooting the takedown. She went 0 for 5, but Carol Hossa has really good takedown defense and a super wide base. They struck on the feet, and Procopio looked good, and that was the one kind of knock that I had on Procopio coming into the UFC. Her striking didn't look great. Well, looked really good in that fight. Then she takes down Molly McCann. Man, I had the stats in front of me. 11 minutes and 43 seconds of control time in that fight, and she looked amazing. So she gained stock in a loss by striking with Hossa. She looked really good against Molly McCann. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, former champ with Shuto. Listen, neither one of these women have a ton of pro MMA experience, so really it's going to come down to the fact is who's more well-rounded or who has that upper echelon in one discipline.
And for me, honestly, I think the discipline comes down to cardio. I know that's not really a discipline in MMA, but when you look at the overall skill sets of both these fighters, they do complement each other very well. For me, it does come down to the cardio, because let's say Procopio does start to just give up an inch with her takedown defense, then I do see Casey O'Neill being able to at least chain some of her wrestling transitions together and getting this fight to the mat. And this should be interesting. Who's going to be able to out-scramble the other one in these takedown attempts? Because I don't see either fighter just being able to secure a regular takedown attempt. I see most takedowns in this fight causing a scramble and then either one really having a 50-50 chance of ending up on top. And that's the fun thing. I don't just necessarily see Casey O'Neill going for the takedown and oh, she's going to end up being the one on top, because for Procopio, she is someone who can scramble after her back does hit the mat, and that's something you really have to like out of her. Because with O'Neill, I do look at her more as I'm in my full guard, then I'm in half guard. She is much more of that traditional I'm in these set positions, where I look at Lara as slightly more able as the one who could scramble her way out of a bad position.
And for O'Neill, she has had like in those Eternal fights, and let's point out a couple of them just to give you some examples. So UA Warrior, she beat Christina Steliou, finished her. The Caitlin McEwen fight, you can find all these fairly easily. The Miki Motono fight, again, maybe not the biggest of records, Jada Kelty, but somebody has to start somewhere, right? If you look at those, sometimes she will go from half guard right into mount. Like, she will flip into some of those positions. But when I look at the odds, Procopio open to minus 175. She's minus 149, minus 150 right now. Casey O'Neill open to plus 150. She's plus 123. If we have a look at Tapology, 738 total votes, 80% O'Neill, 78% by decision for the 28% that are Procopio, 87% by decision. Kind of perplexing to me, to be totally honest with you. Listen, I see this fight as being very close. I see Procopio being a little bit more refined in just about every area. Casey O'Neill will fish for some of those takedowns that aren't maybe some of the most orthodox. I think Procopio is going to be able to get out of some of those bad positions. So for me, I'm going to go with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt out of Nova União. You're going to see Andre Pederneiras in her corner. A couple of pictures there on the Instagram with Jose Aldo and BJ Penn. But also Luana Pinheiro to train with, Pauliana Botelho and Ariane Carnelosi in some of these closer weight classes. For O'Neill, I talked about it, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, but also Extreme Couture. I could go on for days and days about fighters training there, but also fighters on this card from Extreme Couture. You're going to see one half of the main event from there in Dan Ige. But yeah, I'm going to go with Procopio in this one.
So the way I look at this fight is Procopio is the slightly more skilled out of the two, but I would argue that O'Neill, A, is the bigger fighter out of these two, and B, has a slight cardio advantage. I do see Casey O'Neill as someone who can push a slightly higher pace, because for Procopio, she has good cardio when it is at her pace, and when she can keep things going at her pace, but I do think if Casey O'Neill can keep it going at slightly higher tick, she might be able to be the fresher fighter in the third round. So for me, it really comes down to who is going to be the better fighter in the third round. Can Procopio get to such a lead to where the third round won't matter? I am going to have to agree with Craig on this one. I do think Procopio can defend enough takedowns early on in this fight to get off to enough of a lead throughout those first two rounds, and the third won't be as big of a factor.
Would it be a big surprise if O'Neill wins this one, though?
It wouldn't, because like I said, the wrestling is so even throughout these two fighters. So let's say O'Neill has a just slight hair of an advantage in the wrestling, and if she is able to stay heavy on top, I could see an avenue for O'Neill to win.
We're going to find out on Saturday night. Matt, both of us going with Brazil's Lara Procopio. Let us know down below in the comment section who you're going with. Is it King Casey O'Neill? Is it Lara Procopio? Is it the Korean Zombie? Is it Dan Ige? Let us know. Big fights coming up this weekend. You're not going to want to miss them, so keep locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.